And we're welcoming ourselves and you back to this next segment. I don't know if that's a normal segue, but that's what I'm going to say. So, and in keeping with that, this is the last shot you're going to get of our Christmas environment. I'm sorry to say that the poinsettias and the greens, I would like to keep them year round. I'm one of those people that loves Christmas. I think one of the greatest places to work would be in a Christmas tree shop year round because it's just got that wonderful feel all year.
That's
But
nice.
I may be in the minority there. But I wanted to say that because we're going to be saying goodbye to some things in 2022. What is it that you're most happy about leaving behind, Mercedes Sparks, in 2022? I want the audience to think about that too. What are you most happy to leave behind, and what are you most looking forward to in the next year?
To leave behind? That's such an interesting question because I really I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, I don't know. Masks, the unofficial kind of official end of it's just slowly fading out. The war in Ukraine is still with us, so I can't say that. I really don't know. What would you say? What are you most excited about leaving behind?
I am the most excited about leaving behind. Going through last year, it started off like particularly with Flashpoint, and we're working with the TV shows and stuff. There was such in our community, the Christian community, evangelical and charismatic community, there was such an interest in the prophetic sense of what was going on. And I really feel that a lot of that has dissipated. In a sense, it was appropriate in the timing of it, but that now I'm happy to leave behind that feeling of compulsion to have to divine or discern the unfolding mystery of coming events, because I feel as though God has been speaking to me. And we are, I'm a Christian media guy. He's been speaking to me and saying something which is kind of different. And it's what Jesus said, what you hear whispered in the air, proclaim upon the housetops. What you hear in the dark, proclaim in the light. And what that means is when you're in a place where it's dark, that's when God gives you the illumination. And when you're in a place where you're not distracted with a lot of other noise, you can then hear the whisper. And what I really felt is that too many people have been addicted to and captured by news media cycles because there's so much that could pull you in. It's like being a diabetic in a candy factory. A certain amount of information is helpful to navigate and understand the times, but our people tend to OD on conspiracy theories, and particularly there could be an unhealthy, you know what the occult is? It's trying to access what God hasn't revealed by other means. And so many people are actually almost occultically trying to peel back the layer of what's coming in the future, not because of a godly desire to know, but because of an insatiable curiosity or an anxiety.
Yeah.
So walking by faith, I'm just saying this I'm talking to my audience out there, because in the war room with Bannon, which is where I got started on RAV, we began to realize that they would be like 10% on the spiritual great awakening thing and 90% on the tactics. Now it's funny, Bannon's like at a point where he sees a greater realm of the spiritual. And I think a reverse is happening with my movement, my people. God is saying less and less about titillating you with sneak previews so you can eat the popcorn and know what's going to happen next. And he's saying, that's none of your business what's happening next, but here's what you're called to do. I'm seeing the percentages reversing, where we're being put into God leading us to practical things that we're called to do to occupy the territory we've got, to realistically occupy and influence culture rather than kind of vicariously do it through prophecy.
Yeah. I think too, a lot of people went into the election right in 2020. It's going to happen. Trump's going to win. And then we were like holding the line, and then that didn't happen on. And then it was still like 6 more months and say more months. I think there's a lot of people who have put the popcorn down essentially and have woken up. And now we just went through the red trickle. And that is one thing I will say I'm thankfully behind is unchecked Democrat policy at a federal level. We left that behind in 2022.
Yeah, and let's get this straight, people. What Nancy Pelosi did with an iron hand was take this gavel with just 5 to 7 seats. Same thing we've got. And she brought that hammer down. And we couldn't wait to get rid of it. Guess what? We don't have 20 or 30 seats. We have the same margin they had. And if we can demonstrate the right kind of focus and clarity, we can begin to push back on the agenda. And it's as though God said, I'm not giving you an artificial victory. I'm giving you a realistic victory that gives you the margin of making a difference if you're focused, disciplined, and pay the price to get it.
I agree. And that's what I was going to say. I think people are waking up to the fact that they have to do the work, that there is no, and I think you said this earlier, but Trump and Rush, and I feel like you are a voice of a movement, but you have to have the movement that puts those people in place. But those people aren't the movement. They're going to make mistakes. I mean, like there's some news articles we have here where it's like Trump did what, and you question some of the decisions that are being made, but these are people. They're not infallible, but it's the entire movement that comprises saving America. At the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. But we have to do the work. Like we talked about in a different broadcast earlier this week on the podcast, the idea of, there's like this theory kind of within Pentecostal world of, we're just going to get money. People are just going to give us money. And it's like, no, God.
It's called the transfer of wealth theory.
Yeah, but
which
God.
seems absurd when you look at it, the economy now.
Yes, but God gives you the power to create wealth. It doesn't just magically show up in your mailbox. A lot of times there's a lot of hard, diligent work that you have to do. You get some sort of idea and you create it, or you partner with somebody. So my point is we have the same battle ahead of us going into 2024 and beyond. Like to your point, they had the same margin and we can turn the ship around, but it's going to involve all of us.
Now, and this is the part that disturbs me. Now for a little bit of disturbance in the force. I'm reading about Trump and his and of course it could be taken a little bit out of context, but he's complaining about the midterm losses and making the statement that he believes that it was the pro-life or the radical pro-life stance of candidates that is responsible for the losses, that his overall track record was great except for those pro-lifers that were too extreme. And what I want to say is there's a guy named Terry Schilling I heard on War Room. And my wife met him, and he's in Dallas every now and then. She wanted to get him here in the studio. And we almost did it, but we just were busy. And I listened to him one day, and he gave the most powerful analysis after the midterms. He said that like 83% of the candidates that were pro-life got elected. That where you have strong pro-life voices, it wasn't a problem. What was a problem was McCarthy and the Washington consultants would withhold money from candidates unless they subscribed to the consultants that were given to them by McCarthy and the Washington stupid think tanks. Those guys decided that the best way to deal with the abortion issue was to avoid it entirely. So they got pummeled by the Democrats on their pro-life position, but weren't allowed to challenge the narrative and push back and say the logical question, which is, what month do you prescribe is appropriate for the for termination of the fetus? The 9th month, the 8th month, because what you find is 70% of the Democrats don't agree with the 9th month termination idea. They just don't like the radical suppression of a woman's right in the first place. So what I'm saying is the Karl Rove type consultants tied the hands of the conservatives so that they couldn't talk effectively, and instead they were told, emphasize the economy, emphasize the border, emphasize energy and infrastructure. So they lost to a great extent, not because of what Trump said, which is their pro-life position, what was so radical, but because they weren't able to articulate their position the way that they wanted to. Hey there, you just listened to an excerpt. That's a little bit of the podcast. So if you want to get the whole thing, because there's a lot more content there, go to lancewallnau.com/podcast. And instead of getting an excerpt, you get the entire message. Friends, the news headlines prove only one thing, and that is that the world is actually a very fragile place right now. And that means the time to prepare is now for more instability. So let me ask you, do you have enough emergency food on hand to get you through a severe shortage? Most people actually don't. That's why I recommend the My Patriot Supply. And right now at lancewallnut.com/patriot, you could save $150 off of a Vital 3-month emergency food kit. That's a kit that actually contains a whole lot of different kinds of meals. They're actually tasty. They got 2,000 calories a day in them. And we're talking about breakfast and lunch and dinner and a combination of different meals. That's going to be lancewallnut.com/patriot. Save your $150. Get a hold of the 3-month food supply and do it now. Don't be a victim. Don't live at the last minute and decide that you're going to do it when they don't have the product, but take action. lancewallnut.com